And now back to your regular programming.
If you speak better to yourself.
You showed up for probably the dumbest conversation we've ever had on this show.
Let's have that smile again.
Tell me how that happens. Physically should not happen.
Relax.
If you say
Give me as well.
3 times a day, God will line it up.
He's just an absolute hack, and he gets his ass kicked by the teammates every week. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson, 2 former college football players from the University of Rhode Island. Today, we're here to preview the semifinal round of the FCS football playoffs. We're going to be talking, of course, Montana State versus South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Sorry, Montana State versus South Dakota and North Dakota State versus South Dakota State for a rematch of the marker game. Sean, before we get there, can you share with our listeners a word from our friends over at BetOnline?
I would love to. As I am abroad right now, I put down some nice NFL wagers at 4:30 in the morning on Sunday, sitting in the Newark airport. Guess what, Joe? Big winner. Rolling through. I had a Monday night 2-pick parlay. The Falcons stink, but somehow they held off the 5.5. BetOnline is where you need to be putting down all of your action. If you have a certain inclination to have wagers going on a family vacation, and you're drinking a whole bunch of Costa Rican beer, and your parents are wondering why you're not as talky at the table. Well, it's because I'm sweating out of bed against the Raiders. That's why, Mom and Dad. I will be back to the conversation soon, but if you are homebound in the States, you can bet on college basketball, NHL, UFC, tons of college football this weekend. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here.
All right, Sean, Montana State is hosting South Dakota. A lot of South Dakota fans a little chirpy this week going up against a team that lost their best player in the first quarter or early on in the game regardless. Let's see how they're playing against this Montana State team, Sean. 3:30 p.m. Eastern time this Saturday in Bozeman, not indoors. We have talked very highly of how dominant this Montana State team has been offensively, defensively. They have been blowing past teams. But South Dakota had a great defensive performance, turning over Miles Hastings 5 times in that game. Can they replicate that same turnover success? I don't know if it's that simple. We did see for a very short period of time, Montana State started a little slow against Idaho, but then they started to roll. I lean pretty heavily in the direction of Montana State for this game because of how good we know that they are and how unstoppable they have been. This does not feel like this is where their slip-up point is going to be.
If there was a situation this year where Tommy Mellott had become turnover prone or he had started looking sloppy down the stretch when he started facing better teams, then maybe I would start considering the possibility of South Dakota giving them a real legitimate run. But it feels like this Montana State team has somehow gotten stronger when facing higher level matchups, when faced with playoff teams, good teams that have had very good years. They didn't slow down. They didn't have, it didn't look like that it phased them at all, which just reinforces how championship built the program is this season. I promise people, I know I probably worn you down with all the first in the nation rankings, second, whatever, third. No, it's very well might be the best offense in the nation that Montana State has put out. And I thought they had the best offense in the nation last year. This one's even better. South Dakota is in for a long day on defense against this just incredibly virile Montana State offense.
They're also going to have a lot to deal with going up against this Montana State defense led by Brody Grebe, who's got 9 sacks on the season, 7.5 tackles for loss. The one thing that I'm seriously wondering, and it didn't seem to hinder anything because Adam Jones played as well as he did. I'd love to know what the heck's happening with Scottree Humphrey, who is their leading rusher on this team, had 1,300 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns on the year, but was unavailable for the Idaho game. Not a lot of transparency. I have not been able to find any articles that lead in any direction. I'm sure somebody has a comment on a message board that's buried 50 miles deep on some website that says the exact details of the injury report on Scottree Humphrey, but at the current moment, we do not know. Tommy Mellott has been great at protecting the football, only 1 interception on the season. So for South Dakota, they need to find ways to create turnovers. Creating turnovers is the only way against an offense that is this consistent, that is this confusing to stop and this tough to stop, that has so much momentum on the ground on a snap-to-snap basis, the way that you stay in the football game is by getting turnovers late in drives, early in drives, to put yourself in a position to score with a short field. Otherwise, they're just going to keep rolling. I think that if there is a team, though, that could get into a shootout that's left, it could be this South Dakota team, because they can put up a lot of points in bunches. They have their own running back duo of Charles Pierre Jr. and Travis Tice, where, if one guy's maybe not playing that great, they can turn to the other. And Aiden Bauman has also had a couple of nice performances and looked solid in their win over UC Davis.
Yeah, if I'm Montana State, I'm not terribly worried about Scottree Humphrey, which is crazy to say. But the only reason I'm not as much is because they have Big Sky Freshman of the Year, Adam Jones, who has just been a fantastic compliment to not only Humphrey, but also Malott. So they're going to be able to slot him in expectedly, and he should make a huge difference. And then this South Dakota offense, I know they have the very strong defense. They've got the solid, really good D-line that I'm excited to talk about in a moment. The offense is really good also. And we've talked about the running back duo, but Bauman's had a really solid year. I don't think we have given him enough shine, but there are also so many other good quarterbacks in the FCS to discuss, and Bauman just was not in that level, but he is a quarterback in the semifinals. So we have to start acknowledging that he can lead this offense, and that South Dakota fans should be confident that they will put up some points. I do think they will. I don't think this is going to be some fantastical blowout, but if the South Dakota offense can be potent, then this would be a very good game.
Also, another player to shout out, Mike Grace, who is the Defensive Player of the Year for the Missouri Valley Football Conference. He is very disruptive. He is going to be a big anchor along that defensive line. Can he create disruptions against the run in order to slow them down on various plays? The biggest key is, how does South Dakota start this game? Can they start hot? Can they start with energy to give them momentum to keep this game close early on? But you can't flame out the way that Idaho did, where all of their energy went into the first couple of drives and then boom, done. They were out of the football game before you could even blink a second time. Like you said, though, there's really little reasoning to believe that this game is going to be as lopsided as that Idaho matchup. Idaho was was in a talent disparity situation. We already saw them get their butts kicked during the regular season when they played them. And also, I kind of wonder if the Coach Eck move, if there had already been talks about it and some guys were getting distracted. They did seem like they were playing in a distracted manner. I don't think that's going to be the same case for South Dakota, as they have always put up a really tight fight against every single team that they've seen this year.
One reason to give them some solid credit is, their last couple games beat North Dakota State, beat Tarleton State, beat UC Davis. I might have had them as a favorite against Tarleton State by less than 10 points in that matchup. And they keep on proving people wrong. So I will absolutely give them that credit, that they have been on a tear, that if it was South Dakota State or one of the other three teams that are left in the semis, they would be getting much more run for the absolute tear that they've been on in late November, early December. And if I was a South Dakota fan, I would have hope that this is likely the best defensive line that Montana State has had to face all year. And they have an exceptional offensive line. They can move the ball on the ground. They can protect Malott. They do a lot of really good things. And they got very key offensive linemen that make huge blocks when it's needed. But this is the best defensive line that I think they're going to have to face off all year in South Dakota. Two very big impact defensive linemen that just bring the pressure and cause chaos. And to see how they, I think the first quarter is going to be a really good test to see who has that initial push in that front seven matchup.
And the other thing, too, is that deserves to be brought up, that Montana State's had a tough schedule. South Dakota's had a tougher schedule, not by a larger margin, but South Dakota can boast that they've been challenged by the other two teams that are still in the playoff field, and they beat one of them. The time that they fell to South Dakota State, we saw that South Dakota State was able to take away their run game. They were the most successful team that we've seen slow down the run game. Charles Beard Jr. only 3 attempts in that game. And Travis Tice only rushed for 78 yards, still ended up going for a 5.2 yard per carry average, but they couldn't get things going on the ground. And South Dakota State was able to do and have their usual success and win that game in overtime, being balanced and playing, again, just overall really stout defense. Montana State has a lot of things that can be replicated from South Dakota State, and they can do it possibly more efficiently because Tommy Mellott has been more efficient compared to Gronowski.
I think it might also, if Bauman has a turnover in this game, that could be the nail in the coffin. It just could be, because the max efficiency that Montana State is operating with, like, he has to be perfect. And it's not just perfect to say, oh, he had a big third down conversion. It's perfect in every single decision that he's making. It has to be the least jeopardizing one that he is working through. Maybe it's not the best big balls decision, take it over the top. Oh, he missed that throw. It was a bit overthrown, but keeping the ball out of harm's way and not giving Montana State a shot. You can't afford to have extra possessions. My March Madness bracket always wins in pools that I'm in, Joe, whether it's a work pool, whether it's a family pool, whatever it is, because I go off of one stat: offensive rebounds. That is securing possessions and extending the possibility of more scores. Now, this is very
I'd love to
here.
know the legitimacy of that claim that you just made, that you consistently win. That is a crazy,
consistently crushing,
crazy thing that no one's going to bother try to disprove. I would love to know if somebody has some scuttlebutt here, if Sean's lying or not.
You come get some scuttlebutt this March, pal. I'll put you in a pool. You'll see how this goes. Oh, how did they get upset? Because they keep possessions, because they don't let the other team have more opportunities at scoring. That's why. And I think Montana State is so good at that. South Dakota, you got to get your own boards in this game. You have to be able to protect that ball. And if you punt, everyone's going to have to punt. All right. I'm not saying you're going in here thinking you're going to score every possession, but you can't do the silly stuff. You can't put it on the ground. You can't throw it to a wide open defensive back. If it's a tip ball drill, so be it. But the silly one, that's the one that's going to kill you this late in the season.
Now we've got a rematch in the other matchup of the marker game this Saturday, December 21st, 12 p.m. kickoff time is when that game is going to be starting on ABC. They're boxing out the college football playoff. I want to check that really quickly to see if that's right or not. That's interesting that they made that programming decision. This first time that they matched up with one another, we watched as both teams duked it out defensively. Both quarterbacks didn't struggle, but didn't have their same significant impact, except for Cam Miller, who helped lead that final drive. It felt like Cam Miller was just a little bit of juice that they needed to get over the hump in that final stretch to put the points on the board for them to win the football game. It also felt like one of the bigger separation points between these two squads is that, and we've talked about this before, South Dakota State doesn't have that same level of tight end talent, the same level of receiver talent that they could rely on in the passing game. And North Dakota State, well, it's not gaudy, does have a couple better athletes like Bryce Lance that they can toss the rock to, and that has been one of the catalysts for Cam Miller's really efficient season. He's coming off a game, though, where he had multiple picks, which was very uncharacteristic. It was an uncharacteristic matchup going up against this Mercer team that was unbelievable at turning the ball over. Last bit here before I turn to you, it's almost comical. If you showed me both of these as blind resumes, I couldn't freaking tell you which team is which, because points per game, 37 for South Dakota State, 39 for North Dakota State. Points allowed, 12 for South Dakota State, 17 for North Dakota State. Yards per game, 441, 424 for the other. There are just so many similarities between these squads, except for like a couple slight differences in which we could probably guess. North Dakota State has a little bit more success throwing the football, and South Dakota State has a little bit more success running the football per game. And they're both, as we know, extremely freaking stout on defense. If this is a rock fight and it ends up being like 7-3 or 3-2, I wouldn't even shake my head and be like, wow, that's a crazy score. Like if people were geeking out on Twitter and this game is 3-0, I would be like, y'all just don't know FCS, but you don't know these two teams. You haven't been paying attention to these two teams. Don't try to act all sit here and surprised. We knew coming into this that this was going to be low scoring. Watch me say that, Sean, in this game be like 45-52 or something stupid like that.
That'd be great. I am so excited for this one. I don't know if there's a rivalry in college sports right now that is so consistently putting out the best possible output than the marker game, than South Dakota State, North Dakota State. Every game is nuts. Every game you don't know who's going to win. And then as the programs keep evolving, and South Dakota State really finally took the baton and surpassed for a couple years. Look at North Dakota State charging back. I so similar. I'm glad you noted the blind resumes, because if you think we're blowing smoke, we're not. It's absurd, and it's the leaders of the team also. It's everyone is so reflective. Miller and Gronowski's stats are damn near identical. Amar Johnson and Shamar Brown damn near identical. 13 touchdowns, 14, both right around 1,100 yards. Wildy and Lance, super similar years. And then defensively, Adam Bach, Logan Kopp. Honest to God, you could have flipped every one of these. I think if you decided to flip two leaders from each team over to the other, and you would have had identical seasons for both programs, no matter what. They are plug and play dudes that just go get after you. This is such an exciting matchup. I mean, look, both teams lead the FCS in just about everything, okay, except for Montana State. So it would be boring, and it would just be a broken record to sit down here and talk about how that they're third in yards per game allowed. It is going to be an absolute carnage-filled game that you just have to buckle up and watch and see who comes out the victor. I would be foolish if I sat here and definitively said that I knew who was going to win this one.
Quick shout. I got to give some love to Gray Zabel, who I've been glazing a little bit the past couple of weeks. He is a phenomenal offensive lineman, the best prospect in this game between the two teams, and is somebody who has serious consideration to be a guard that's drafted in the top 75, top 100 picks of the 2025 NFL draft. He was a Senior Bowl invite. The NFL is a big fan of him. I think that the biggest key to victory for both these squads, and it plays into the outcome of the first game, which quarterback has the best game? And I'm not sitting here saying that Cam Miller needs to throw for 350 yards and 4 scores, and Mark Gronowski needs to go for 200 through the air and 200 on the ground and no interceptions. They're both facing really difficult defensive matchups. The first time that they played, it was really hard to convert. It was really freaking hard to convert in short areas. So which guy can make the big play? The last time that they faced off, it was Cam Miller. It was Cam Miller who finished off the drive that led to the winning score that gave them the lead. Who is the player that's going to step up? It is going to come through the quarterbacks, because these guys are the most experienced, and they are the guys that have been there before, that have been on national championship winning teams. That, to me, I think has to be the biggest talking point.
I think Gronowski plays better than in this matchup than he did in the first matchup, which would be good. And that gives South Dakota State life. I think he just gets super locked in for the playoffs. I think he's still a stud. He didn't have the best year that he's had in college. I get it. You lose a bunch of NFL weapons. It's going to happen. On the flip side, though, Cam Miller, I don't see a way that he plays worse than Gronowski. I think he has had such a good year. I just really, really impressed with him this season. It would feel weird to see him go out with to send this season out with a whimper and not an absolute bang. And I think he does go out with a bang. With what he's put on this year, years past, I'd say, okay, that was a bit whimperish. I wouldn't have been too upset if that happened, but he has absolutely carried this team for North Dakota State throughout the year, whereas traditionally it is the North Dakota State team that carries the quarterback. And now we are looking at a guy that you don't have all of the exceptional weapons. You don't have a Christian Watson in this class. You don't have multiple possible NFL offensive linemen. It has been his team, and he has just absolutely rallied and put together a great season. I do think that he gets the edge over Gronowski in this one.
And to illustrate that, before we wrap this up here, that the difference in what impacted this last game when they played, 20 of 27 passing attempts for NDSU, 6 yards per attempt. 17 of 30 for SDSU, 3.9 yards per attempt. The biggest thing to like expand upon what I'm talking about here with quarterback play. It's not just who's making the best decisions and setting his team up for the biggest level of success. It's also creating some sort of, I'm not saying you need a multitude of splash plays, big 20-yard gains, just on how these teams win, but who can get through and who can crack through on a play action pass? Who can get that chunk gain throwing the football when both these teams, their strengths aren't throwing the football? Both these teams are going to try to grind you out, and their opponent's going to do everything possible to slow you down on the ground. And I keep coming back to what that catalyst was in this first matchup was when Cam Miller connected with Rajah Nelson at the end of the game.
I'll one up you. I think it's also going to be who wins the first fight that breaks out in this game. That is going to be a big indicator.
Who's gonna do the boom dance?
yeah. Who decides we are going to boss up and not take S from the other team first? And I wouldn't be. What are the bet online odds of a pre-kickoff fight or scrap, at least between the two teams? It's going to be chippy. It has to be chippy. You're not sitting out there in the cold, just angrily warming up because it's so freezing. No, you're in the dome. You're feeling a little toasty. You're feeling ready to go. You got the sweet turf under you. Now I'm going to start jawing. Now I'm going to start really giving you some. And I think, there's going to be fireworks in this one. So excited for it. Michigan, Ohio State, who? Put your eyes on the marker game. Watch someone get their jaw broken.
And listen to people with bad shoes in the stands yelling at each other. That was a weird thing that we encountered. I'm rewatching this Rajah Nelson touchdown pass that Cam Miller threw. Just to jog my memory on it, it really plays into what we're talking about here because Cam Miller sees this tight opening over his shoulder, over Nelson's shoulder, and he brings it down. And then I love it also plays in what you just talked about. Nelson starts doing the Cam Ward. He starts doing the and the South Dakota State secondary was not happy about it. They looked pretty pissed.
All right, I'm certain it gets broken out. Why would you not do a repeat?
Yeah. We need some sort of a fight. Let's just close out really quickly with FC estimates between the two of us. For Montana State, South Dakota, who are you going with?
Montana State.
I'm taking Montana State and North Dakota State versus South Dakota State.
Oh, boy.
I'll tell you who I'm going with.
North Dakota State.
We can't both have North Dakota State. No, then we're gonna be haters. We can't. I was gonna say North Dakota State. You can't. You know what? I'll do it. I will let you have North Dakota State. I will take South Dakota State.
There's no let here.
No, we can't both be hating on them. Last time we did this,
I think we just did a
podcast with 400 followers on Twitter clipped us and was being a bunch of losers, and I got mad because it was in the middle of a work day on a Sunday.
Well, you're not calling them the Kmart
guys.
Rabbits. That was a nice professional show.
It's the Kmart cows. That's what North Dakota State is. Let's go South Dakota State. Oh, God, I'm just making my picks to appease people. All right, I think it's going to wrap us up here. At Joe DeLeone, at Sanderson Radio, at Hack City Pod. We'll talk to you folks later. Enjoy the rest of your week.